All right, this is the demonstration video for tracing a hexagon pattern onto this piece of paper, which will be your final draft piece of paper. We will get into the examples of this project, what it looks like when it should be finished, all the really specific guidelines. All I want to address in this video is just the steps for tracing the pattern onto your piece of paper. Now, this piece of paper is obviously bigger than the screen that I am able to show you, or the part of my table I'm able to share with you. But I wanted to use the actual size piece of paper. So I'm gonna align my paper here on the screen so that you can see the bottom corners of that paper. What you should receive is a template that's a hexagon. That means it's a 6-sided shape, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it should be labeled with one side showing that it's the top. It really is not relevant whether this is the top or this is the top, but you just need to be using the same part consistently throughout this process, so I labeled it for you. You also need to use a pair of scissors. So we have to start this process by just very carefully cutting out this shape. You want to cut just kind of right outside of the black line. You don't really want to cut inside the line and try not to cut on it. You want to cut right outside on the very outer edge of that line. This is copied on slightly thicker paper so that you're able to use the paper to trace. It's really hard to trace copy paper because it's so flimsy. So I copied it onto a paper that was slightly thicker so it would be easier to trace with a pencil. So I'm going to just, like I said, I'm going all the way around right now, using a pair of scissors to cut just on the outer edge of the black line for the template. Try not to cut on the line, or definitely not inside the line. We want to see that black outline on our template. This can just be thrown away. Please do not leave these at your table or on the floor. Make sure these get thrown in the trash. The next step is going to be pretty easy. We're just going to start tracing. However, we cannot trace, we don't want to start in the middle of our paper and trace, because all of these hexagon shapes are going to line up next to each other. It's going to look something like a honeycomb when we first start. There will be steps after this as well that are going to change the look of it a little bit, but it's going to sort of look like a honeycomb, that all of these shapes are going to be bordered and stacked all around each other. So we can't start in the middle. We have to start from the bottom left side. And to start, we want to line up the outside edge, the left edge of the hexagon with the left edge of your paper, and you want to line up the bottom point of the hexagon with the bottom edge of your paper. This part's really important because putting this first tile on here, or tracing this first shape, is going to set up the arrangement for the whole paper. So this can't be off. We have to very carefully place this very first template trace that we're going to do on the paper. So you want to hold it still with whichever hand you don't write with. Get a pencil. We have to use pencil on this, and just like always, the lighter that you draw this, the better. But you have to use a pencil. So grab a pencil, and we're going to just carefully trace the outside of this shape. Now, I didn't trace the left side because the left side is the edge of the paper, but I traced both top sides. Now I'm tracing the right, the bottom, down to the point, which remember that the point should be touching the edge of your paper. And then I'm going to trace the other bottom side that touches the left and the bottom of the paper. So now we've got this shape, which I did it really lightly in pencil, so it's a little bit difficult to see probably, but I traced this hexagon shape on my paper. Now we're just going to repeat this step. This is a simple process, but you have to pay close attention because the process has to be, the placement has to be accurate. Tracing is very easy, but the placement here is what we should be focused on doing correctly. So for my next, I'm going to continue across the bottom, and I'm going to line up the left side of the shape so that it's touching the right side of my previous traced shape. You don't really want it to overlap, you just want it to be touching exactly. And then again, you're wanting to make sure that the bottom is touching the bottom of the paper, and we're going to trace. Just like we did before, do it as lightly as you can. Again, the tracing is the easy part. What we should really be focusing on is that we're correctly lining them up on the paper. So I'm repeating, moving across. making sure it's lined up here, that these are touching each other. I shouldn't even have to draw this side when I'm tracing this time, because that side is, the left side of this hexagon is the right side of this hexagon. They share this line here. Move it, and every time you move it, just make sure that you can see that you didn't forget to trace any of the sides. If you did forget, you just want to place it back as closely as you can in the exact same spot and trace the side that you missed. None of this should be done. At this point, we're not using a ruler at all. I only want you tracing this template that was given to you so that every single one of these hexagons is exactly the same. This piece of paper is cut so that you should be able to fit 5 of these hexagons exactly across the page. And you see that we do have probably just a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch here left on the edge. Go ahead and leave that space there. Don't worry about it for now. We're gonna just go ahead and trace 5 across the bottom like this. Now, do not fear, I'm not going to make you watch me do this entire piece of paper, but I do want to go ahead and show you just how to start the second row, because this is how you'll start all the rows after this as well. So now that I've done all 5 across the bottom, I started from the left. I made sure that each point touched the bottom of the piece of paper and that each hexagon shares a side with the one next to it. So I'm going to take my template and I'm going to lay it here on the top first. We're going to address this empty space here, but for now I want us to start with this whole shape. So that means that the point of my hexagon template should be touching the point between these two here. And this is how we start to develop this honeycomb pattern. It's very important that they're touching and sharing sides. So now I don't have to draw these bottom 2 lines because these bottom 2 lines are shared with the previous shapes. So I'm only tracing here on the top and on the left. So we see now there's another hexagon. I didn't even draw these lines. I used the lines from the previous ones because they were lined up so closely together. Now, like I said, we need to deal with this empty space here. The way that we are going to deal with that is line up the hexagon template so that the bottom is touching the bottom here. These two touch each other, and the right is touching the left side of this shape. And at this point, all you need to do is connect there. And that just shows us that there's one that's going off the page. So we would move along through this by now placing so that the hexagon template is touching on 3 sides. It's touching here, it's touching here, and it's touching here. So now we're only drawing the other 3 sides, and it's really important that you're lining it up exactly. Just like that to create the next one, and so on and so on. And then again over here, we're gonna have another half shape. And then as we start to build on the 3rd row, we would line it up so that the point is here, trace these sides and build along. So you need to be doing this until you have filled the entire paper, all the way starting in the bottom left and then tracing so that they touch each other and share sides all the way across, then move up to the next row. So you're working from left to right, bottom to top on this template. So just to recap very quickly, number 1, the first thing we did was you had this, used a pair of scissors to carefully cut on the outside of the black line. Then we used the template, we started on the bottom left and started tracing lightly with a pencil only. It can be a mechanical or the wooden pencils that I gave you or any wooden pencils you may have, but it is critical that you are using a pencil only, no pen for this part of this assignment or for any part of this assignment. All right, this is your assignment for today. So before you leave class today, you should have accomplished filling in this entire page by tracing this template very carefully. Remember, the tracing is not the hard part. The lining up is the important and more difficult part. After you finish this, I want you to put your paper and the template on your shelf. Do not take this home. It's too big to fit in your book bag anyway, so you don't need to take it home. It wouldn't even be convenient, but you need to leave this at school. Do not take this home with you. You're going to take this whole paper and the template and put it on your shelf. This video is available on Canvas to be rewatched, so please rewatch if you need to.